If I asked you who is the greatest athlete ever, you would have an answer for us in absolutely no time. And even if I said who's the greatest athlete alive today, you would probably have an easy answer, because there's a lot of great athletes who are still living, even if they're not playing right now. But who is the greatest athlete playing today? I mean, not during the quarantine, but in general, who is the greatest athlete playing today? We're going to dive down that rabbit hole. The greatest is a subjective measure for sure, but we've got a choice of, I don't know, millions of athletes. Bubba O'Neill from CHCH, right now, playing today, performing today, who is the greatest athlete?
Well, you know, it's funny. You're putting me at the top of the heap here, so I could get in all kinds of trouble. But I think before I say this man's name, and you know, we can go to man, woman, but what is greatness? And I think that's something that we need to discuss, obviously. So I obviously look at someone that is, you know, at the top of their game, has won championships, and as I think we could all agree, someone that transcends their sport. So to me, that's LeBron James, and the fact that he's a 3-time champion, he regularly makes visits to the finals, makes his team better. It is an exclusive player. I think anytime you get into the area where you're finding excuses to give MVP trophies, which he's won, I think, 4 of, to other players because you're getting bored of their greatness, I think that you've gotten to the top of the mountain.
So let me bring up that thing about greatness. Are you arguing that LeBron today, the version of LeBron who's 35, 36, is the greatest player, greatest athlete in the world, or that his body of work is the greatest of anybody who's playing right now?
And not to duck your question, but I think a combination of all right now. I think, you know, and again, this is why I qualify it by saying we're trying to find excuses to find other people that are MVPs. I still believe that at this point right now, I'm not asking you if I was going to start a team who I would pick, but the MVP of the NBA at this point right now is LeBron James.
Rick, you buying the LeBron James argument?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, there's no wrong answer here. You can put a ton of men and women in this category and not be wrong.
Well, sure, there's a wrong answer. Kyle Clifford is a wrong answer.
There are some wrong answers, sure. But, you know, I don't mind LeBron as well. I mean, he's not only been at the top of his game since he came into the league. I mean, he's averaged no less than 25 points a game throughout his career. I think his career average is 27, but only once in his career is he averaged under 25 points a game in a season. And that was his rookie year when he averaged, I think it was 20.9. But LeBron is not my pick. I'm going to go on the ice.
Get to your pick.
Okay,
Before we get to your pick, is LeBron even, Steve Milton, is LeBron even the best player in the NBA right now?
When he wants to be. And that has something to do with his age. It's not because of desire. It's about timing and that kind of thing. And I actually think his age is a factor in why you could argue that he is among the or is the best, or 1, 2, 3. You know, I don't think it's as clear cut as it once was, even a couple of years ago, because I think there's another component to this, that when we're looking at what's subjective about this, what does athlete mean? Does it mean player? Does it mean athletic components, like all of the things that go into that: strength, power, speed, defensive, brain power, competition, transcending isn't part of the athleticism part. Is it got to do with digital and foot dexterity?
You're not going to suggest that a horse is the best athlete.
No, because, you know.
No more secretariat arguments.
And I love the complete game that he plays there. And I think that when he wants to be, he is the best player. And now, I'm not saying he wouldn't be my choice necessarily either because of some other things. And you know, I'm assuming I'll get my turn on that.
No. Well, think about it. Right now, there's been a lot of debate about Kawhi and LeBron. If you, for 1 year, for this playoffs, assuming they come up, if you had to choose between Kawhi and LeBron to be your guy for these playoffs, which I think would either make Bubba's case or at least support his case or not, who do you take, LeBron or Kawhi for the playoff run?
Well, depends who's he got with him, because I think Kawhi can make guys better players for sure. Both guys can do that, but But most recently, Kawhi is the guy who's actually done that.
Rick, is it Kawhi? Is it LeBron? Or, go ahead, Bubba. Kawhi, LeBron, or someone else? Bubba?
So I'm just saying LeBron, and to me, that was great what Kawhi did. We visioned it. I mean, it's something that we'll hold close to our hearts for many, many years. It's odd enough that happens in the 1 year that LeBron's team did not make the playoffs. But I could point you several examples of Cleveland Cavalier teams that had no business, not even getting to the final, maybe not even getting to the Eastern Conference final. I'm talking about LeBron James putting 12 people on his back and carrying it to two NBA championships. I can specifically think of one against the Spurs where it's crazy what one man did. But I still think that greatness transcends in today in what we're talking about right now. So the greatest athlete right now. I think you could make a great argument between him and Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's the best in the NBA. Yep. And again, I will still say right now, to me, the most complete player, strength, speed, carrying people, jump shot, slam, dunk, excitement, and then all the things outside of the sport, that's LeBron to me. I don't think it's close.
But Rick Bubba says that it was LeBron who carried Cleveland. I'll argue Kevin Love did that, but I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
You know what? I would take LeBron. I would take LeBron over Kawhi just because of all the stuff that he has accomplished. You know, Kawhi's done it a couple of times. He's been the NBA Finals MVP a couple of times now. He plays a great defensive game. He's great on the other side of the end, as we all know. But I'll throw another name in there apart from Giannis, and that is Kevin Durant, who's injured right now. Another, I think, top 5 talent in the NBA. Still on the right side of the mountain. On when these athletes hit and the downside of their careers. LeBron is slowing down a little bit. He's still heads and tails above many other players. So great pick for Bubs, no doubt about that. But yeah, I'd choose LeBron over Kawhi at this point.
All right, so Bubs picks LeBron. Rick, who is your choice for the best playing athlete right now?
So I looked at baseball first, and I thought, they're not really athletes. I mean, come on. When you can have a 280-pound pitcher on the mound throwing 98 miles per hour, which is very impressive, I don't consider that athlete compared to the people that I'm going to pick, and that is Sidney Crosby, a guy who's still 32, and I say still because he's accomplished so much, whether it's Olympic gold or Stanley Cups.
It does seem like he's been around forever, doesn't it?
Yeah. Hart Trophy winner, Lester B. Pierre. I mean, he's won it all. He's done it all. He's led some talented teams, yes, to Stanley Cup championships, but he is the straw that stirs the drink, and he has been such a generational talent in a league that is full of superstars. He continues to rise above the rest, and he does all the little things right. Goes into the corners, mucks around, plays a physical game. He can fight if he wants to. He doesn't really have to, but a guy who can dish the puck, can shoot the puck, is a natural-born leader, does it with humility and grace. He's my top athlete right now.
Okay, Steve, so by the same argument that we used with Bubba, with LeBron, if you're going to say Sidney Crosby, by definition, he has to be the best player, at least in his game, before we can have the discussion about greatest of all. Is Sidney Crosby, first of all, the greatest hockey player right now?
No, but could he be the greatest athlete who's a hockey player? And that's potentially right. And but I mean, Connor McDavid's the best. But at this current moment, there's a redundancy. But and I would even throw, when you talk about athleticism, weird, but I throw Ovi right there with Crosby, because he's got this sneaky great athleticism to him, balance like I've never seen before, physical toughness types of things, strength. Now I'd opt for Crosby on this, because we've seen him take various parts of his game every single year, and I can remember the first 3 years he overtly said, "This is what I'm working on this year." Right, the first year after he played, he realized lower body strength. Second year, a face-off shooting, I think it was. Third year, face-offs. And each year worked on an athletic component. So I would think I'd give him the edge over Ovechkin, but I don't think from an athletic standpoint it's as broad as we might think. But in terms of best player, I don't think there's any argument that at this moment it's McDavid.
Bubba?
Yeah, it's hard to take McDavid off his perch right now in terms of his domination of the National Hockey League. And it's funny, but I think it's funny how we do rally for the old guy, and that being Sidney Crosby now. I can't believe we're calling him an old guy now, but he is getting into that second stage of his career. But the fact that he is able to hang on to that mantle and make a discussion out of it, I think shows to his greatness.
Can we still call him Sid the Kid, or is he Sid the middle-aged guy now? I would argue.
Yeah.
I'd still argue for Crosby as the best hockey player, and I'll tell you why. Because I think that McDavid is faster. Obviously, he's got a lot of things going. McDavid has a great wingman or a great other center in Draisaitl, like Crosby did. Crosby's won cups, and I know it's not a one-man team, but my goodness, Sidney Crosby has made everybody on his team a lot better.
Pretty
McDavid
good.
has too. McDavid has too. But there's just something about Sidney Crosby that wherever he's gone, he's won. How many times has Crosby missed the playoffs? Has he? Once, maybe? I don't know.
I don't think so.
There's something about that ability to make everybody around you win or to draw something out of you. And I'm not taking that away from Connor McDavid for sure. But I'd give the nod to Sidney Crosby, which would then mean that I can then go forward with Rick's argument that he could be the greatest athlete playing today. Because if he's the best in his sport, then he can potentially be the guy. Steve Milton.
Here's a shot. I'm going to go off the grid a little bit and relate it to sort of personal preference. But for the better part of a century, who did we regard as the best athlete in the world? The best decathlon. The best decathlete is who we regarded as the best athlete in the world because of the variety of things that they have to perform all in a short time. Now, they may not be the best at any of those, but when you put it together, and they usually are world-class in 2 or 3 types of those things, I think you got to look at a guy named Kevin Maillet. And honestly, I didn't even know. He didn't win the Olympics, right? But he did set the world record right after the Olympics. And that's very difficult to do in these times, set a world record in the decathlon. So you could make that argument. And secondarily, because of the nature of the game and because of what they have to do, I would put Ronaldo right there. Because now you could say, what about Messi? Well, Messi plays a different type of game, a less athletic game. Ronaldo plays the game in midair, on the ground. I mean, some of the contortions of the body looks like a gymnast. It's why I've often felt that basketball and why you would go to LeBron James, because it's a 3-dimensional sport. Both basketball and soccer, increasingly so, it's played in the air. And that adds a different component. It adds a gymnastic component. When you cover the NBA, and everybody here's been to games and covered them, you almost miss the replays because it's hard to realize it at real time, all of the things that the basketball players do to drive to the hoop or to cover to somebody who's driving.
Well, it's a lot of big bodies in a very small area, Steve,
That's
which
right.
is hard to pick up. Where
and
soccer,
the things
you've
that
got
they have to do
guys.
and change their body shape. And I'll argue the same with soccer too. So I'm going to go with the decathlete, but with the soccer player very, very close second.
Just quiz question here, Bubba, Rick. Have you ever heard of this guy? Do you know where he's from? Do you know anything about Kevin Maillet?
No, and that's why, to me, for me, that's why I think you have to transcend your sport and you have to be known, at least in North America or known in Europe or in Asia or somewhere, where your name is synonymous with, greatest athlete. And you're right, the decathlete thing does combine, all the many facets of being a wonderful athlete in size, strength, speed, endurance. So I don't think Steve's not wrong here by saying that. It's just I don't think he transcends his sport because a guy that we hear of maybe once every 4 years, to me, doesn't fit at least my criteria.
Could he, though, Bubba? This was supposed to be an Olympic year. So might the story have been different if we had the Olympics coming up? Might we have known about this guy and gone, wow, that guy's the best ever?
Well, it depends on what else happened at the Olympics, because there's a lot of things that can happen at the Olympics. But I think, I'll take Bubba's point and maybe have to change that to best. So then best athlete, which is a little more gradable, and you take the transcendency a bit.
The funny thing is, Steve, wouldn't we forget about this guy 2 weeks later after the Olympics?
Well, that's why I say the greatest versus best, and we had that same argument when we did that a couple of weeks ago on LeBron, right? And so that's why I think there is a distinction between greatest and best.
That's the nature of the Olympics, though. I mean, we are in awe of these athletes for a few weeks, and then a few weeks after the Olympics, we forget about them. And with, you know, the decathlon, it's not on TV every Saturday night or every other, you know, Sunday afternoon. It's, you know, one of those sports that sports fans love to watch when it's on during the Olympics, but every other time we lose interest.
Well, it's even hard to watch decathlon because it's a 10-part series, right? It's sort of the Netflix of sports.
Yeah, and
I'll jump on your.
I was going to say, I'll jump events in there that we don't really care about. Sorry, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to jump on your Ronaldo thing too, Steve. And, you know, it's a great choice. And the debate between him and Messi is going to be a lifelong debate. But the thing to keep in mind with Messi versus Ronaldo, they both have success on the international stage. They haven't won World Cups, but they've won, you know, their European or South American championships. But Messi has stayed with one club team pretty much for his entire career, and that's Barcelona, whereas Ronaldo has played in the Spanish league, the English league, now the Italian league. He's done it all with different teams in different leagues who played different styles, and he's been one of the best in those leagues at that time. So great pick.
All right, Rick says baseball doesn't count. So
I'm just kidding.
I was going to argue there.
So, I mean, my first thought, of course, is Mike Trout, only because the guy is doing things at a level that no other baseball player has done, I don't know, since Babe Ruth. I mean, my gauge of who is the greatest always goes to what is the gap between you and your next best contemporary. That's the only way we can judge these things, is how are you compared to the next best person. And Mike Trout, I think he's finished first or second in MVP voting every year he's played, and he's putting up numbers that are all time. So that was my initial one. But I do have someone else, two people actually, that sort of tie because they're in the same sport, that I hate to do this because they fall into Steve's same category of people you may not have ever heard of. But it's Matt Fraser and Tia Claire Toomey, who, if you've ever watched the CrossFit Games, which are basically a torture endurance thing of stuff that none of us can do, he's won 4 times in a row, she's won 3 times in a row, and if you've watched it, you go, how can they not be the best or the greatest athlete competing today? Any of you guys even heard of these people?
Just, you know, because you mentioned them before, but at work, but best versus greatest argument again. You know, same thing as the decathlon. If it's the same argument holds completely, and I agree with that. And that in terms of multiple skills, those things are really, really important. Which is why I'd almost also lean towards some of the MMA guys. The two particularly that are top now, Jones and then what's the guy's name from Kazakhstan? Those two guys. I mean, because of the variety of skills that they have to have, including balance and all of those kinds of things. But I want to ask the other guys while we're on this. Trout is the guy that makes me think about it. Ovi, Crosby. Look at the players that are losing very key component parts of their career.
Yep.
Trout particularly. But you could also argue Ovi in his chase to get the goal record too. And do we see this as some kind of disaster, or how big a disaster is that the greatest may not become the greatest all time in their sport, even in the small facet, because they're losing this. Now others have lost some things with strikes and that kind of thing.
Didn't Ovechkin lose some time to a strike or a lockout as well?
The lockout, the year-long lockout, he lost his first year, or second year, I think,
But could it also be said that, you know what, you're kind of saving your body as well, too, in some respects, too, that you're not, I mean, the National Hockey League is such an incredible 8-month regular season grind that they've had time. And now, of course, no one would want this, what's happening right now, to happen to any athlete in any league. It certainly hasn't been fun for any of us in terms of the athletes, the media, the fans. But, I mean, at the end of the day, these guys are going to be ready to go once the season does kick in.
Well, that's why I think it punishes Trout. Well, I think it punishes all of them because you don't know how long it's going to go, and you don't know what happened when an older player comes back. The theory right now is that it's one of two things, right? Is that they'll get that rest, but also you don't know what the actual just time passage is, just that extra few months is. But Trout is losing this right at the prime. I mean, absolutely prime.
Well, what's also punishing Mike Trout is that he's losing $200,000 a day.
Yeah.
That's if that's not punishment, I don't care about your numbers. Those are your numbers. $200,000 a day he's out right now. One of 4 major league players who's losing that kind of money. I'd like to say I weep for him, but it's a little hard.
Yeah, I think it's most cruel for Ovechkin because he's chasing that, all-important record of goals scored in the NHL by Wayne Gretzky. He's been relatively healthy throughout his career, so this is really a wrench into that pursuit. Gretzky obviously missed a lot of time with his back issues, or later on in his career. But the fact of the matter is that Ovi has put his body on the line and has still played a very healthy game. It'll be interesting to see if he can eventually catch him in a few years.
Guys, can I throw in two names that I think that are tied for two that we have not brought up here? And that is in tennis. And I'm going to go and lean towards Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer and what they have done. You show me anyone in almost any sport that on a regular basis can be on the court or whatever athletic place that they play in for sometimes 3 and 4 hours at a time. That is an incredible – watching these guys is crazy. And, of course, Roger at his advanced age. Now, I don't put in Rafael Nadal because of his domination on clay. He just hasn't won, to me, on as many surfaces as Roger. And I think when the time comes, because I think he's only 31 years old, I believe Novak Djokovic will pass Roger Federer as the greatest.
What about Serena?
Yeah.
What about Serena?
Serena, I could have had both of those.
Yeah, I would put Serena ahead of both.
Yeah. You know what? Why I won't put Serena there, and I'm a bit. I mean, tennis. Many people don't watch this. I'm a huge tennis guy, and the reason why I don't put Serena there is because a lot of that has been done in years where this tour was not that competitive, and on a second basis, on a technical basis, is that Serena has the best serve of all time in women's tennis, and that has saved her from extending points. From what we've seen from, say, a Chris Everett-Lloyd that was a baseline player that went from, could play long points. Serena's, because of her serve, she's a serve and volleyer as well, too. Her points don't need to be as extended in terms of length.
But a serve is part of your game. I mean, a serve counts like a power play goal counts, so I don't
And Wilt Chamberlain was tall.
Yeah.
I think you can't knock Serena for the level of competition in tennis because maybe the level of competition was really good and she was still that much better. That's the category I put her in.
I think she's the greatest women's player of all time. But I'm going to put Novak and Roger ahead of her for the reasons that I stated out there. I think they're more complete players than Serena has ever been because you've seen in time, and I'm not going to even count where she is at her stage of her career right now. But whenever she could whenever she faced a player that could extend points, that had a good return of service, Serena would get a little flustered because she can't play long points. She's just never been that way. She's too big athletically, and she just doesn't have the endurance as some of these. I'm going to use fitter to a very loose standard here. But when she played players like that, she would struggle.
Not with you on that at all.
What do you think? Who is the greatest greatest active player right now? Is Bubba right that it's not Serena? Maybe it's Serena. Tell us who you think. You can comment below. You can put it on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are on the screen. They'll be up later. Follow us here on Home Games. You can see the follow button, the subscribe button below. You can hit the little bell so you can get a notification every time we come up. We're here regularly. We're here all week. We love it when you watch. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you guys soon.